What happens when one of Hollywood's most iconic actors joins late-night TV's most provocative host, only to realize he's walked into a trap? The atmosphere in Studio City turned electric as Robert De Niro faced off with Bill Maher in what would become one of television's most intense and revealing interviews. This wasn't just another awkward celebrity moment, it became a textbook example of how unresolved grudges can unravel public decorum on live television. De Niro, promoting his latest film, arrived at HBO studios expecting a routine sit-down. What he got instead was anything but. Maher welcomed him in the green room with his signature smirk. "Bobby, great to have you here," he said, his tone already hinting that this wouldn't be the usual exchange. De Niro, known for his reserved nature, nodded politely. Once the cameras rolled, Maher wasted no time diving in, opening with a jab at Hollywood while hinting at De Niro's stature. "So, tell me, what's it like being considered Hollywood royalty in an industry that seems to have completely lost its direction?" Maher asked. De Niro responded calmly, "Well, Bill, like everything else, the industry's evolving. There are hurdles, sure, but also a lot of fresh, impressive talent coming up." Maher leaned in, sharpening the tone. "Evolving, is that what we're calling it now? Because, from where I sit, it looks more like a complete breakdown of artistic standards. But you'd know about that, right?" The studio fell silent, sensing the confrontation deepen. De Niro's expression tightened. "Not sure what you're implying, Bill," he said evenly. Maher pushed forward, accusing De Niro of damage control and mocked his use of method acting. "Let's talk about your recent remarks on method acting. Interesting, considering your whole career's built on playing tough guys, though in this town, we all know the real story." De Niro's eyes narrowed. "The real story," he repeated, voice low and simmering. "And what story would that be?" Maher smirked, suggesting De Niro's on-screen persona clashed with who he really is. After a long pause, De Niro offered a cool smile. "You know what, Bill? You're right about one thing. There is a gap between image and reality in Hollywood," he said steadily. "The key difference is, some of us earned our reputations." That line landed hard, causing a brief flicker of unease on Maher's face, but he quickly fired back. "Earned? Funny coming from someone who spent the last 2 decades cashing in on work he did 40 years ago. When was the last time you took a real creative risk, instead of just showing up for the check?" De Niro's grip tightened on his chair, his tone growing heavier. "You want to talk about risks?" he asked, then cited the exhaustive research and transformation he went through for roles like New York, and Raging Bull, comparing that dedication to Maher's cheap attacks. Maher scoffed, dismissing method acting as just another excuse to be difficult on set, and accused De Niro of intimidating directors and co-stars. De Niro's expression darkened. "Intimidation? Is that what you call collaborating with Scorsese on 8 films, or Coppola trusting me with The Godfather Part 2? As Maher continued pressing, De Niro flipped the narrative. He revealed that Maher's team had pitched a respectful, career-focused interview. "Your producers called us 3 weeks back, said this was going to be a retrospective, talking about the new film, about acting. They specifically said this wouldn't be an ambush." Maher visibly shifted, the smirk fading. "Bob, interviews change direction," he said defensively. "Good television sometimes means asking the tough questions others avoid." De Niro's laugh was cold. "Tough questions are about the work, the performances, the process, the directors. What you're doing isn't journalism, Bill. It's taking personal shots and packaging them as entertainment." Flushed with frustration, Maher doubled down, accusing De Niro of playing violent characters and questioning how much of that darkness was truly acting and how much reflected his real personality. The room went silent. De Niro fixed his eyes on Maher, the pause stretching uncomfortably. When he finally responded, his voice was sharp and icy. "You know what sets us apart, Bill? When I play a tough guy, it's called acting. When you attack people who can't defend themselves, that's called cowardice. And when you mislead your guests, that's exactly the type of behavior I've spent my career portraying on screen." Maher chuckled nervously, brushing it off as just TV, and called De Niro's reaction a little dramatic. For the first time, De Niro's voice rose. Not personal, just suggested I'm a criminal, questioned my professionalism, discredited my career, and misled me about the purpose of this interview. How is that not personal? Maher's confidence faltered, visibly shaken. You're misreading the nature of provocative media, he said, attempting to steer the conversation. Sometimes we have to push the envelope to uncover real truths. The truth? De Niro leaned forward, his presence commanding. You want truth? You lured me here under false promises, thinking it'd be entertaining to embarrass someone who took you at your word. The truth is, you're not a journalist or even a real interviewer. You're a shock jock with a high-end production budget. Maher's face reddened further, as De Niro pulled apart the curated illusion behind his so-called unscripted style. That's not fair, Maher exclaimed, voice cracking. I'm asking the questions people want to hear. De Niro replied, calmly but forcefully. No, Bill, you're asking questions you think will trend tomorrow. There's a difference between serving your audience and feeding your ego. That remark struck a nerve, leaving Maher visibly shaken. His face twisted with frustration, as he realized the interview was slipping out of his control. You know what your problem is, De Niro? Maher snapped, voice now quivering. You think just because you played a few tough guys decades ago, you're above criticism? Well, this isn't the 70s anymore, and your intimidation doesn't work on me. De Niro leaned back, a cold smile forming, his calm more unsettling than anger. When he finally spoke, it was deliberate and low. Intimidation? Bill, if I wanted to intimidate you, you'd feel it. What I'm doing is worse. I'm exposing you. I'm showing your viewers who you really are when you think the cameras are a shield. Maher's hands trembled slightly as he clutched his cue cards, his talking points now useless in the face of De Niro's measured dismantling of his persona. You think you're clever, don't you? Maher blurted, his voice rising in desperation. Sitting there with your actor's tricks, trying to make me look bad. But everyone knows what you really are. You're washed up. A relic from the past, just coasting on former glory. The jab was desperate, a last-ditch effort to gain ground. But instead of taking the bait, De Niro responded in a way that made it worse. He laughed. It was genuine, and it made Maher's face turn a deeper shade of red. A has-been, De Niro said, wiping his eyes, still amused. Bill, I've been nominated for 7 Academy Awards, and won 2. I've worked with nearly every major director of the last 5 decades. My films have earned billions globally. But more than that, I've earned the respect of people in my field through consistent, serious work. He paused, letting the moment settle before delivering the final blow. What have you done, Bill? You host a show where you bait your guests and make commentary on the news cycle. When people look back on the last 50 years of American culture, they'll study my work. Yours? It'll be forgotten before you are. The harshness of De Niro's response left Maher speechless. He opened his mouth several times, struggling to find the right words, but nothing came out. The studio remained silent, watching as Maher's confidence seemed to collapse before their eyes. That's not, you can't just, he stammered, his usual smooth delivery replaced by visible frustration. You don't get to lecture me on legacy when everyone knows your best years are behind you. De Niro stood up slowly, each movement deliberate. The act of rising from his chair immediately commanded the attention of everyone in the room. It was clear this was a moment that would be replayed and dissected long after. You're right about one thing, Bill, De Niro said, his tone firm and resolute. Maybe my best work is behind me, but at least I have something worth remembering. At least I created something meaningful, something that will outlast us both. Maher jumped up too, his chair swiveling behind him. His carefully styled appearance was undone, and his face flushed with a mix of anger and embarrassment. Don't you walk away from me, he shouted, all professionalism gone. We're live, you can't just leave because things got uncomfortable. De Niro paused, turned back, and gave Maher a look filled with unfiltered contempt. Several audience members audibly reacted. Watch me, De Niro replied. Those 2 words were more than a dismissal. They were a rejection of everything Maher stood for. A clear message that some things matter more than airtime or press cycles. "You're making a big mistake," Maher shouted after him, his voice cracking. "This is going to look bad for you. People are going to say you couldn't handle a basic interview." De Niro stopped just before exiting the stage. Without turning around, he spoke loud enough for all to hear. "Bill, in 3 decades of interviews, I've never walked off a set, not once. But there's a first for everything. I'd rather be remembered as the guy who had enough self-respect to walk away from a setup, than as someone who sat through it pretending this was journalism." His words lingered in the air, almost like a final verdict on Maher's credibility. The host stood motionless, searching for some comeback, something to salvage the moment. "Fine. Go ahead and walk out," Maher finally snapped, his voice sounding more petulant than assertive. "Go back to your safe little actor world where everyone praises you, but don't think people will forget what happened here tonight." De Niro turned once more, his expression a mix of disappointment and contempt, far more cutting than anger. "You're right, Bill. No one will forget tonight. They'll remember this as the moment you showed everyone who you really are when you thought you held all the power. They'll remember that having a platform doesn't make you a journalist, and having an audience doesn't make you right." With that, De Niro walked off the set, his footsteps echoed through the quiet studio. Maher remained still for a few moments, his expression shifting from disbelief to something close to panic, as the reality sank in. What was meant to be an ambush had spectacularly backfired, leaving his reputation more damaged than his guests. The cameras kept rolling as Maher tried to compose himself. His usual bravado was gone. The audience didn't know whether to applaud or simply absorb what they'd just seen. "Well," Maher finally said, his voice low and unsteady, "I guess that's one way to end an interview." But even that attempt at humor landed flat, sounding more like a quiet admission of defeat than a witty sign-off. The weight of De Niro's words still hanging in the air. The studio stayed quiet, broken only by the soft hum of equipment and the fading sound of De Niro's footsteps echoing down the hallway. As the show went to a commercial break, Maher was left alone on stage, facing the aftermath of a moment that had clearly gone off script. It was more than just a difficult interview. It became a clear example of how integrity and honesty can still rise above provocation and manufactured drama. The exchange offered a revealing contrast between the two men. De Niro proved that real strength comes from standing by your values. Maher, on the other hand, showed that no amount of sharp wit or media training can make up for a lack of genuine character, and that, more than any rehearsed retort or bold accusation, is what made this moment stand out. So what do you think really drove Bill Maher's behavior that night? Was it insecurity, a push for ratings, or something else entirely? Share your thoughts in the comments, and be sure to subscribe for more stories about the moments when Hollywood's biggest names revealed who they truly are when the cameras are rolling.